moving on from where the club is at, what can this potentially be used in terms of strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats? So you guys have had a couple of minutes to work out some potential strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats.
We've got a couple.
So,
So our first strength that we went for. Shall I kick
We'll start at the beginning.
with a slightly corny one. Woo. No, so one of our strength we came up with first was the diversity of backgrounds and interests in the club, as well as literally the diversity of our members, possibly more actively right now, the diversity of what interests and qualifications in terms of what we have people come with. So what interests and experiences they are bringing to the club, and
such as
so from people who only really want to go cruising in keelboats, to people who are keen surfers, to people who are keen dinghy racers, to people who are mad about supping, if that's a word.
People who have no experience and want to try all of it.
Yeah, and the fact that and probably that is true actually, that most people want to try other ones, which means that that's definitely a strength.
That follows on to the second main strength of our club, which is just the range of activities we have and provide. So in the opening 3 weeks of our semester, we will have surfing, yachting, dinghies, SUPs, paddleboards, bodyboards, kayaks, powerboats, all available to club members, plus a couple of things I'll have probably forgotten.
Yeah, some weird people swam quite large distances at the weekend too.
Yeah. If you want to include to that, then we've also got tenders, as I did quite a lot of our own. Yeah, we just provide an awful lot of on-the-water activities.
there's lots of kit, lots of opportunities. Okay?
We've not got all our eggs in one basket.
Yeah. Which also ties into the financial situation, because the finances are also acquiring money from relatively diverse sources.
Big aim at the start of this year for me as Commodore was to diversify the club, because in the past, to get us started, we had to be slightly focused on certain aspects. So therefore this year I wanted to diversify to attract more people, because we've had people in the past who weren't particularly keen in, say, the dinghy side of it, and we didn't have quite as much going on in, say, the surfing side, because we had to focus, because we had such limited resources at the time that we couldn't diversify out. So at the start of this year, that was my big aim, was try and increase club members by increasing the amount of people we had doing different things and providing those things consistently throughout the year.
So other strengths, potentially there's a decent racing background in the club.
Is there?
It's Heiser Club of the Year, no less. Other strengths, like the club has a proven track record of success both in a racing location and in terms of membership recruitment and giving people opportunities, which has resulted in it being Club of the Year last year.
Yeah, we're definitely kind of riding on a high.
Yeah.
The main reason we got that was because of the range of upskilling we did within our sailors, which was taking people from little to no experience at the start of their degree and then going through a 2 or 3 year cycle and then getting these people up to a level where they could team race and compete and not just be turning up and trying to work out what they're doing whilst they're there, actually knowing what they're doing beforehand.
And so I think we'll limit it for the video to 3 of each wherever possible.
Cool.
I think the other one would be, in terms of strengths, think more broadly to UHI has the Wind and Wave Club has a lot of affiliation agreements with a lot of different organisations.
We've got a lot of stuff and a lot of people.
Which are all very positive.
Yep.
All those relationships are generally pretty good and are very beneficial for both parties.
Yeah, so we have strong strong affiliations with people here, and currently the potential to add more in other locations. Although I think that's going to come back to opportunities and threats later.
Okay.
Within these like associations we're working with, it also helps us to get grants easier because we can apply with.
The weaknesses.
Yes, weaknesses would be the next classic.
So, so something we're kind of debating strength weakness.
Oh, it can be both potentially.
Yeah, something that I think. Yeah. Anyway, by the by.
Depending on how you argue it.
Yeah. So anyway, so potential. I'm not really sure here. Weakness and threat are kind of a bit blurry with this one. So a weakness
Well,
slash.
a weakness is something which is currently potentially a problem, and a threat is something which is likely to become a problem.
But it could, okay, but
I
in this
mean,
case, so
everything, all
yeah.
of these things feed into each other.
Okay,
to give
so
you
one that fits into both of those. So something that fits into it as a weakness now, but not too bad, but could become quite a threat in the future.
That would be.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is both is we have quite a broad-based triangle in terms of the experience level of our membership. So we have relatively few people who are experienced enough to run sessions, be responsible for safety cover for a number of people, for running training, for that sort of thing. We have a relatively low number of people at that stage compared to the numbers who are keen to come and join in and train and learn or go on yachting trips or whatever. We have relatively few people who can skip a trip versus people who want to come on one.
Yeah.
We have relatively few people who can do who have the bits of paper especially for these things. And that's definitely kind of a weakness at the moment that we can manage with, but it has the potential to become quite a major threat in the future.
There you go.
Especially since the numbers that we deal with from our kind of recruitment pool of people are relatively small, so that means that it just takes a couple of years dip with fewer people coming in who are already a good chunk of the way up that ladder, that we will really struggle to deal with the number of people who are lower down on that ladder and keen.
Any others?
Just the general size of the club could become a potential threat or a weakness because of that.
Smaller clubs tends to be much more volatile.
Yep. So we struggle to get people into things like team racing and so on because not everyone comes to uni, is really competitive and wants to get into that sort of the side of the sailing. So we get quite a few issues trying to get people into teams and so on. So one of the weaknesses of the club is that this could become a threat because if we don't get people...
Don't worry about how it might become a threat.
Okay.
We'll work on that.
Also, we're very dependent on Open Sailing Club.
Yeah.
So
The flip side of that is because it's a small club and it's very reliant on affiliation agreements. If your affiliated partners start to struggle, you by extension often start to struggle, which ties into the small size.
And also that kind of small size and location. We're not somewhere where we could easily change club. So if Oban were to go through issues or were to decide that the affiliation was no longer going to work for whatever reason, then we would feasibly not be able to run very much stuff through other clubs. The nearest other club is probably 50 minutes drive away, an hour's drive away.
Yeah.
I think before you get to any other club which would feasibly be able to do that, you're going to Fort William or to Glencoe.
Yeah.
Or down to Craignish, all of which are, you're speaking the region of an hour travel each direction.
Compared to currently where you can walk down to the sailing club from the opposite side of town and be there in 20 minutes or so.
And also an hour where we don't have any access to minibuses to move people from the student union, and where there is not good public transport links because we're relatively remote. So I think that probably ties into this weakness of size. It's all one issue, size and remoteness.
But based on this, and so actually we'll then look at opportunities. How could we potentially play to our strengths or minimise some of these weaknesses? What's coming up on the landscape which might be usable?
As part of the diversification drive this year, I've got in touch with quite a lot of our other campuses because UHI is quite unique. We're not all on one campus, we're spread over 13. So I've been trying to get in touch with people at 3 of our closest nearest campuses, and we've had people from the other side of Scotland even trying to get in touch with us to try and get in to interact with us and become club members. So hopefully by interacting with lots of local clubs and campuses as well as further afield, we can hopefully increase numbers and therefore avoid membership dips and get more people who have qualifications to avoid future problems with that as well.
So yeah, other UHI campuses is definitely not.
And other
big
local clubs near to other UHI campuses we have been approached by. So that's definitely an opportunity, which would mean that feasibly, if the club in Oban was to cease to be sustainable for a period of time, the club would survive elsewhere, and they could potentially come back to Oban when it became sustainable again, if that was the case.
Or if the large student body of the club moved somewhere else, then the club could still survive and anything like that.
Any other opportunities?
I think there are opportunities to develop further the other aspects of the sport that we already do some of and that people enjoy, and that gives us a larger number of people likely to want to join the club in future. If we are offering and making sure we offer strongly these several the other sports of the surfing and the cruising and the keelboat racing, not just the dinghies, the kind of core activities, and that means that we'll be recruiting, and we do have members joining who have experience in those areas, and so an opportunity would be to increase the level of maybe not formal training but coaching and upskilling of members that we can do in these other areas.
We've also been traditionally quite good in comparison to our other activities at dinghy racing. So we've been compiling notes and upskilling quite a lot of people to a level where they can then go on and teach further people.
So you have this pathway already,
Yeah.
so potentially this might be an opportunity to extend the pathway, apply it to other things.
That's a way neater way of saying what I was trying to say.
We've had quite a lot of freshers this year who've come in with some form of racing experience. So by giving them the knowledge we've gained and written down in things like a playbook and a guide to team racing, we can easily convert them from, say, fleet racers who may not have the tactical aspect to team racers, or go the other way and teach people how to get the boat speed you need for fleet racing if they already have the tactical aspect of it.
And from there, potential threats that may develop to this particular utopia.
Okay, here's one that's going
I
to have to be
I
carefully
think
dealt
the
with.
obvious one is money, which I think you're thinking of.
No,
No, I
wasn't.
wasn't
Okay.
going with money. Money wasn't even at the
Okay,
anywhere in
so
mind.
it's great us speaking about diversifying to other locations, but we have another actual real sailing club that really want to get involved, have seen us through our Facebook, and so we're obviously doing a good job at advertising and so on. We've had another sailing club similar to Oban, a similar situation that's near to one of the other university campuses that's well out with the range where people could commute between the two. So this would really allow us to have a second base and so on, and trying to go through the union and to communicate with people locally, to find people locally who already have some experience so that they can help take a lead on this locally there, has just been impossible. We've not managed to make contact with anyone. The union are happy to help us advertise generally for members, but at the moment we're not in a stage where we would be able to take on members in other locations and offer them anything. We need a few people who can help lead it locally, because it's too far for us to do. And we're at the moment that finding those people, they're far bigger campuses than here with some of them outdoor education courses, so there are definitely people out there who would be keen and who would do that, but actually communicating directly to those people has just been impossible. We've been trying now for more than 6 months.
So potential threats, maybe communication beyond the union is very difficult. and it's going to become more
And
of a problem
targeted
as
communication.
you look towards expanding out and diversifying this.
So targeted communication. There's methods where we can advertise to everyone in a campus, and so on. But that because the campuses are so spread out, and to many ways operate very independently of each other, we've not got an easy way, and there isn't any way set up through the union or whatever to communicate with other campuses to find people who could help take a lead locally in diversifying to those campuses.
Well, it could become more of a problem if Oban, for example.
A threat, because at the moment, again speaking selfishly here, the club is able to survive without diversifying to other places. At the current, it's thriving, I would even say, without actually having any other bases. We're getting lots done here, but in the future, if that stopped being the case,
this is a threat to your expansion.
It's a threat to our ability to move to other places and to expand, so that we are not so reliant on this individual location and individual clubs and people to affiliate with.
Ultimately tie into one another. Things that are currently weaknesses can become threats because circumstances change and weaknesses are not necessarily well addressed at the time. Any others potential threats looming?
It's
not just in the immediate term, but potentially in a 3-5 year timescale.
We could have exactly the same conversation, though, based on if, on a slightly smaller scale, if there was to be a catastrophic failure of equipment.
Or if a storm came.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I guess the point is here that we have some fairly narrow bottlenecks in terms of kit.
Yeah.
That if there was if there was a bad storm or if there was some other catastrophic failure, we could end up with a little bit of, certainly one of our areas of operation, maybe we'd get away with keep survive on the surfing stuff because that's all stored indoors. But the sailing side of things might be fairly well wiped out in one catastrophic storm or other event. And that could take quite a while, although it's all insured, it could take quite a while for us to get up and running again. And when you're speaking of the timescales we have, there's a big pressure to keep stuff happening every year. We can't really afford to miss a year.
The continuity of the club would seriously be disrupted if we lost anything.
We saw last year that to a lesser degree, where we had a poor autumn for weather.
Very poor.
And because of the exposure of our sailing location and the lack of an alternative, we had to cancel a lot of training and a lot of sailing. That resulted in a noticeable dip in members and a noticeable dip in terms of members coming up to a higher skill level.
As well as new members joining the club.
If that was to happen for a couple of years in a row, then we would be looking at a proper threat, as opposed to a minor dip which we recover from the following year.
One might almost suggest that climate change is a threat. Threats.
Yeah, if there's going to be a hard Brexit and there are less students coming, that would be a threat to university and also the club.
Yeah, particularly at a university which is so heavily reliant on international students.
Well, EU international students
which
is a
make
very
up about a third of the student body.
Comfortably,
And
probably more than that of our membership.
Yeah, there is a disproportionate amount of EU members currently.
Yeah.
So the current political climate, along with climate change, also does tie in. Threats are potentially very broad and maybe not necessarily solvable at a sailing club level.
Also, long-term qualification of people. So having people who've actually got the skills and the qualifications to teach or instruct at the sailing club, whether that be within Open Sailing Club, the Sea Cadets, the high school, or us as the Wind and Wave Club. There's very limited to no upskilling of people through the actual qualification stream. So therefore having people to match RIA quotas and so on who can actually provide a training experience is quite hard. So if these people leave and aren't replaced, then the club will cease to exist in some aspects.
leaving
Yep.
a class remote. I'm not sure it's fair to say there's little to no upskilling. We
Yeah.
do
I
do a reasonable job of upskilling people.
It's
But
getting them to
the
the
time
higher
frame-
qualification
Yeah,
level.
The
I
time
realise-
frame that you have as a university club, and I think this is probably fairly universal with university clubs, the time frame that you have to upskill people to a point where they count for ratios and so on, and certainly are able to take the lead on training, is fairly low. So we are very reliant on getting people in who are already part way up that.
Yeah, I
That's
realised
right.
as I said it that was slightly.
Fantastic. So we have a
And we'd
series
be
of
very
different
reliant
tracks.
on people if we were to go down in terms of senior instructors, we'd be very reliant on people in the affiliated clubs that may not be able to offer nearly as much as, understandably, would not be able to offer as much as instructors for students.
Yeah. Fantastic. So this all builds together into your SWOT analysis, and from there we then can look at potential ways of cashing in on these opportunities, potentially mitigating some of the threats, playing to our strengths, maybe addressing our weaknesses, or potentially addressing our weaknesses to the exclusion of our strengths, because our strengths are always going to stay the same. Unlikely, but possible.